Thank you for joining us today for a webinar with VCU Alumni called Advancing the World Through Sports, a celebration of the International Day of Sport for Development and Peace, which we are celebrating today. My name is Dr. Amy Gray-Beck. I'm the Executive Director for Alumni Relations and a proud alumna of the School of Education from 2019. We will be recording this webinar and captioning it and sharing it on our YouTube channel for later viewing. You can catch all of our previous virtual programs and Q&As on the VCU Alumni YouTube channel. Today, we have some questions to get us kicked off, but attendees, you can put questions in the chat feature or the Q&A feature on the webinar, and we will try to get to as many as time permits. I would like to introduce you to our moderator for this afternoon, Dr. Carrie LeCrom. Carrie has served as the Executive Director of the Center for Sport Leadership since 2015, holding various roles within CSL since joining the staff in 2003. Under her guidance, the program has launched a dual degree program and a doctoral track in sport leadership, and has since seen significant growth in terms of competitiveness and reputation, as it is currently ranked top 10 in the nation among graduate programs in sports business. Dr. LeCrom is passionate about the use of sport for social change and has secured over $2 million in grant funding from sources such as the U.S. Department of State and the National Collegiate Athletic Association. Some notable related initiatives she has overseen include two-way exchanges between the United States and Ethiopia, China, South Africa, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, India, and Sri Lanka, among others. She is currently embarking on a new cooperative agreement with the U.S. Department of State's Sport Diplomacy Division, focused on 4 countries across sub-Saharan Africa that will run through 2023. LeCrom's research interests lie in sport for development and global sport. She and her family spent all of 2019 on a Fulbright fellowship living in South Africa, where she implemented a female-focused gender empowerment program through the sport of soccer. She has published in various sport-based journals and regularly presents her work at national and international conferences. She holds degrees from Lynchburg College and VCU, and she's married to the director of the youth development for the Richmond Strikers Soccer Club and has 2 children. You can see she's an expert on this topic, and so we are thrilled to have her here today. Carrie, welcome, and thank you for moderating our live Q&A today.
Thanks, Amy. I appreciate it, and welcome to everyone who's joining us today. As was mentioned earlier, today is International Day of Sport for Development and Peace, and we always like to do something special to celebrate the huge power sport has. To give you a little background, in 2013, this day was coined by the United Nations, really just to be an annual celebration of the power of sport to drive social change, community development, and to foster peace and understanding. And so as someone who has worked in this area for quite a long time, I love getting a group together to talk about the many aspects of sport that I think we sometimes in the United States take for granted, given its huge revenue generation and entertainment-based focus. And so I am really thrilled today to be here with 3 exceptional women who I have had the pleasure of working with. And so I will briefly introduce each of them, and then I'm just going to jump into some questions. And as Amy mentioned, we welcome questions from the audience as well. So really excited to spend some time with 3 fantastic people. So I will jump right into introductions, and I'm going to start with Roxy Davis. So Roxy is a 9-time South African surfing champion, professional surf coach, business owner, mother, and founder of the Roxy Davis Foundation. So she's very busy. Roxy's a longtime coach and administrator in the sport of surfing, and teaching people to surf is her passion. She founded a surf school in South Africa in 2002, which is now the largest surf school in South Africa and one of the largest in the world. And in 2019, she officially launched the Roxy Davis Foundation. It's a nonprofit that aims to affect meaningful change in people's lives by improving their mental and physical well-being through ocean-based therapy programs. Outside of the water, Roxy has an honors degree in psychology and communication through the University of South Africa. She's a registered psychological counselor and is a qualified chef. She's currently studying for a master's in health and rehabilitation sciences at the University of Cape Town. And I had the pleasure in 2019 of being a regular volunteer for the Roxy Davis Foundation, and the surf therapy they provide is fantastic. So welcome, Roxy.
Thank you.
Our next panelists, actually our next two panelists are both alum of the Center for Sport Leadership. And so I have had the pleasure of working with them when they were students and now as professional colleagues who I'm learning lots from in the great work they're doing. So first I will introduce Roshana Hamilton. Roshana currently serves as the Senior Director of Community Relations and Youth Programs for the Miami Dolphins, overseeing outreach, diversity, inclusion, and youth initiatives, and she has crafted a very diverse career in the sport industry. She began in inside and group sales for Monumental Sports and Entertainment, and then came to VCU to receive her master's degree in sport leadership. That led to an account team position with GMR Marketing on the Lowe's business, streamlining store opening and events for over 15 locations, building strong community platforms and partnerships with the Charlotte Bobcats, and maximizing the business-to-business client entertainment priorities. As a former collegiate basketball player, she eventually got back into the sport that she loved, working for the Atlanta Hawks as the manager of community basketball programs, where she was responsible for creating the Hawks Basketball Academy and the growth of the Junior Hawks brand and business to over 2,400 participants with 90 events and activations. And Roshana has also found time to teach for the CSL. So we're so pleased to have her as part of this today. Welcome, Roshana.
Thank you.
And last but not least, I would like to introduce you to Alejandra Ortiz. Alejandra was born and raised in Panama and went to Ditela University in Argentina, where she graduated with a Bachelor's of International Affairs and Studies. Alejandra complemented her academic career with the sport of horse show jumping, and during this time was a silver medalist at the 2010 Central American Games and the first Panamanian to qualify for the 2010 Singapore Youth Olympic Games. After finishing her undergraduate studies, Alejandra served as a political advisor at the Permanent Mission of Panama to the United Nations. In 2019, she obtained her master's degree in sport leadership at VCU. And during this time, she started a career in fundraising where she worked as a development assistant for both Swim RVA and VCU Athletics. She later worked in development for the Wolfpack Club at NC State. And in 2020, Alejandra joined the First Tee of the Triangle, a nonprofit organization that teaches character skills and promotes social development through the sport of golf. So welcome, Alejandra.
Thank you.
As you can see, the resumes, those were condensed versions, by the way. The resumes are really impressive. And so I think we have a lot of interesting areas covered here today and great things to talk about. So I wanted to kick this off with an overarching question to all three of you. So in Sport for Development, we often hear the famous Nelson Mandela quote that says, a shortened version, sport has the power to change the world. It has the power to inspire. It has the power to unite people in a way that little else does. It speaks to youth in a language they understand. And he goes on. And so I am curious if you all could share with me why you believe this Mandela quote is true about the power of sport.
I can start, doesn't matter the order. Well, for me, sports, coming from and working in different countries and all that, it translates to culture. And so if sports is culture and we share a common set of values, it's going to translate right through, it doesn't matter the country, the language, where you're coming from. And so I think that's the beauty of it. And that's the reason why it also speaks to youth in a language that they understand, right? If we have the same set of values, it's going to speak easily and it's going to resonate and make a change. So for me, it's sort of goes along those lines.
I'd say if I had to take surfing as a point of reference, it's more than a sport. You become part of a tribe and a community of like-minded people where age, gender, race, culture, financial status, religion, they just don't matter. It also doesn't matter where you live on the planet. Once you become part of that tribe, regardless of where you're located, you are part of that tribe. So my son is an example. He is 3 years old. We paddle out to the back line and he turned to me the other day and said, Mom, everybody's just so friendly. I have so many friends out here. And that's really the essence of what that sport gives you from the eyes of a 3-year-old.
Yeah, I echo kind of all of those sentiments, but I will also say, looking at sport from the professional side, and obviously a very big brand within professional sports in general, I think that sports has a platform and a voice that really no other entity in the world has. You know, it's on our televisions, it's on our devices. We are now all over social media, and athletes are all over social media, and they have a following and a voice that allows the impact of what they do to be able to spread really throughout the world. So I just think that sport has this platform to really speak for communities that sometimes don't get heard. So I think that that's very important and kind of pays homage to what Nelson Mandela was saying.
Great, thank you. I think that's a good place to start because there really is great joy in sport. And I think that's one of the things that we tap into when we talk about sport for development, working with youth or populations that have been marginalized and no longer have to feel that way when they can engage in sport. So I want to ask each of you a specific question about the work you're doing because I love the diversity we have here in what your focus is. And so I'm going to start with you, Roxy. You obviously were a world-class surfing champion yourself in multiple disciplines. So aside from your own passion for surfing, I'm curious about what led you to the creation of the Roxy Davis Foundation and the need for an organization such as yours. So maybe specifically with the focus on people with disabilities.
Thank you. I started my surf school in 2003. So it really just came from wanting to afford women the opportunities that I had received through surfing to participate. And it was really just a male-dominated sport back then. So women really just needed that permission and invitation to participate. And from there, surfing obviously grew, and there were more. Now there's more women in the water than there are men. And a friend of mine, Ann Smythe, he's a 2 times world adaptive surf champion. He's also 2 times US surf champion as well. And he came to me in about 2015 or 2016 and just said, like, hey, you know, there's so much benefit to surfing. And back then, really the science behind the benefits were becoming more and more evident in regards to surfing for people with a disability, just from promoting inclusion, optimizing physical functioning, enhancing overall well-being, and more specifically, kind of controlling or slowing the progression of chronic diseases, we've realized, and improving overall health for participants, but not just for participants, for their families as well. So I could see it in the everyday of our surf school, and I really wanted to formalize it to be able to offer the same benefit to those who couldn't afford it. And we have people who are living 2 kilometers from our beautiful beach who'd never touched the ocean before. And in the early days, we realized that some of our participants couldn't even swim. So we had to start with the Learn to Swim program in the local pool and then move it to a Learn to Surf program. And what came out of it really was the participants shared their attitude of, if I could do what I could never have imagined myself to do, what else could I do? So it just gave them so much more, and this hope just through this, you know, dipping your toes in the water to paddling on a board. And in South Africa, specifically around the surf therapy, not much is geared up for social inclusion for people with disabilities. Once you're at home, you can't really get out. You're very limited in terms of where you can go. So statistically, there are over 1 billion people that live with some form of disability worldwide. So the global burden of disease estimates about 95 million children between the ages of 0 and 14 have disabilities. So we really wanted to create this environment to let everybody participate. And that's how the Roxy Davis Foundation was formally formed in 2019. And it's just really grown from strength to strength. And the benefits have been far beyond what we could have comprehended from psychological, physical, and psychosocial well-being.
Thank you so much. Yes, I think the other thing I'll just add and probably an additional bonus is for the volunteers and staff that you have working with your organization. They, I'm guessing, get as much education and joy and fulfillment as the participants themselves. So I think that there's a huge dual benefit that you can sometimes see unexpected bonuses.
Some of the participants actually say, the volunteers say that they get more benefit out of it than the participants. So you're right.
Totally believe that. Yeah, great. Thank you. So I'm going to shift to Alejandra, and I want to ask you, and some of our participants today may not have a great understanding of the first T. So as you answer this question, maybe even give a little, like the very short version of what the first T does. But my question is, with your current work at First T, and having lived and worked in various countries, are there things that you see with regard to sport for social change that work across different contexts and cultures? Like maybe any best practices that you think that any and all working in this space should adopt?
Yeah, I mean, I think that something that can translate to, across countries or, social classes or anything is that if you give, in my case, the youth or kids, the tools to be successful, that can be the infrastructure, that can be, a good program implemented that would teach character skills and leadership and development, you're going to make them successful. So I've come across that. In my case, there's not kids who don't want to golf or who don't want to do, surf or whatever sport it is that they don't have the access to do it. So if we implement the correct set of tools and programs, you can make anyone successful in that regards, both sport-wise and person-wise, like in their personality. So going back to the culture part, is also the beautiful thing about sports for social development is that it's going to be the same values: leadership, discipline, honesty, competition, and you can teach that anywhere, and it has the same meaning. And so that I think it translates borders, and so it is essentially that, I think. The second part of the question, any best practices, for sure. Even though sports is a common language, the needs and the social issues are not the same, right? And so it's very important to actually tackle what's the issue in your city, in your county, in your country. So it's not going to be the same in Panama. It's not going to be the same in Argentina. It's not going to be the same in North Carolina. It even changes from city to city. So I think a best practices or good implementation of the program, it has to do with what's your why, like why are we doing this, because it's going to change from place to place. So identifying what's the issue, it's gonna make your program or more successful in impacting those youth.
Thank you. And Roshana, to you, I think your position is somewhat unique in that my guess is that the lay sports fan may not associate the NFL or even most professional teams with sport for development. So I was hoping you could talk a little bit about the work you do with the Dolphins and how that work fits within the sport for social change space, just to provide our audience with a little more education on the impact the NFL can have in this space.
Awesome. I will say I do see a couple of my students on here, so they should know the answer to this right away and they get extra credit for showing up. I'm totally kidding. They don't. But so what I do for the Dolphins that I think really connects with this topic is, as you can see, I mean, in our world this year, we've had a ton of tragedies. We've seen, unfortunately, right, the Black Lives Matter movement and the killing of George Floyd. We've seen this Asian hate kind of resurface in this time. And so as I was speaking about before, we really do believe that sports has this giant platform to be able to address these huge societal issues. And so at the Dolphins, we've actually been in the diversity and inclusion space for about 3 years now. And I helped, while I was there, our owner, Stephen Roxy, owns a nonprofit called the Rise Initiative for Sports and Equality. And that we worked with them to say, we really want to tackle some of these challenges that we're having in that diversity and inclusion space. And we helped to start a program called Football Unites. And essentially what it is there's a collective of about 30 nonprofits that we consider partners, and then probably an additional 20 allies that we bring together to do work in South Florida to make South Florida more inclusive. If anybody's ever visited South Florida, they know that we are a huge melting pot. We have a huge population of immigrants and people from other countries that just represent rich culture here in South Florida. And so we try to bring all of those groups together to say, how do we collectively kind of move our market forward? So we do a lot of different programs underneath that umbrella. We do programs with youth, we do programs with our actual Dolphins players, with our staff and employees. So we are walking the walk, but we also donate money to some of those causes. So we do kind of help to fund some initiatives that are all about making South Florida more inclusive and also making equitable opportunities for all of the people that live in this area.
Super. So it sounds like, and I know this is true, that all of you have done lots of work in this area over several years. And so I would love for each of you to share an example of, let's say, quote unquote, victory that you've witnessed in the work you do, something that really got you excited about the work and kind of pushed you to want to keep doing more. So if you can give us an example or a story, that would be fantastic. So let's start with Roxy, maybe.
Thanks. We've got actually a really good news story that's happened recently. We have one of our surfers, her name is Nolutando. She's got cerebral palsy and she started surfing when she was in 2014. She lives in Kailicha, which is one of our local townships, with her family. And they've been coming down to the beach quite regularly. She trained for the Western Province Championships, and then she trained for the South African Championships. She won the gold medal in the South African Champs, and she got selected for the World Adaptive Surfing Championships in California last year. So she flew over to California just before lockdown, and she actually won the silver medal at the World Championships in her category. So she came home a silver medalist at the World Championships, and then off the back of that, she's just won the Minister's Recognition of Excellence in Sport in South Africa. So she just got awarded it at one of the big ceremonies at home here. And what's even more exciting is that she's now working in partnership with an organization that we work alongside, the Altitude Foundation, that provides skills to assist with training and support in terms of employment. So she's walking a journey with us, and not just through her skills and excellence in her sport participation, but also journeying with us through life.
Wow, sounds like she'll be a great ambassador for the work that you're doing. So that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing. Alejandra, any examples you've seen that have been just like something that really made you say, yes, this is why I'm doing this work. It's worth it and it's fantastic.
Yeah, so I think I forgot to talk a little bit of what I do. You know, we teach character skills and through the game of golf. And so that means our program, you don't need to know anything about golf. It's not required. We'll give you everything if you don't have it. And along with the program, the idea is also to make you a better person, or give you the tools to, you know, either become more confident in yourself or work on other stuff. And so it relates to, I wanted to mention that part because it relates to my, you know, sort of victory, which I really think it's just, you know, product of the whole team. Especially during COVID, I started working during COVID. So it was very emotional. It was very, we felt like we needed to be there for our community because kids were not going to school. Parents were going crazy at home with their kids because, you know, the kids were not having any social stimulus. They were not, it was just, everything was weird. And so for some families it's easier, but others not. Like if you don't have the economic support of having your kids all the time at home and you need to work, it was a lot. And so one of our first, I would want to call it outing, or one of our first trials of going back to the golf course was just, come, let's play 9 holes, a very short course. Let's see what happens. And so we got this, especially this family, the 2 brothers. They had never played golf. Family, was struggling financially, and both kids had a lot of, anxiety and depression. The mom told us this from the start. And so the kids, we gave them the clubs, right? We gave them the golf clubs and all the equipment. They had never held a club in their life, like it's never, not even how to grab the club. They played, it was very hard. They were a little bit frustrated. It was very hard through the 9 holes. And then when they were about to leave, we tell the mom, this is for you, the golf clubs. Like, you don't need to give them back. It's for them if they want to keep playing. And the face of the mom saying, are you serious? Like, for us, it didn't mean a lot to just give the clubs, but for them, she just said, I've never seen my kids this happy since, I don't know, 4 or 5 months. Like, this day has made a huge difference in their lives. And so my program mind was like, okay, but I want to keep them to see how they evolve, right? Like, I want them to keep playing golf. I just don't want them, like, if this was good for them, I would love for them to be in the program, the whole year and see what happens. And so they stayed, thanks to us giving them the clubs, they stayed engaged. They did all the summer programs, every like golf course, we would do this, like Wednesdays, come and play. They would come, get better. And then by the end of the year, they would play 18 holes, like actually playing golf. And for me, it was just like amazing that they could, from 0, go to actually be able to play golf. And that's just the golf part. But then the personal part, the way their anxiety and their social interactions and their social intelligence, like their emotional intelligence, I could actually see a change. And for me, I mean, that's when you say, oh my God, I feel like I'm success, like that just fulfills me, right? Like, you can see how a person can actually change the way they were in a good way, both athletically and, personally. It was just like a victory for me. And now they can go out and play golf. And it was really nice.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. That's a wonderful story. And Roshana, how about you? Either, I guess, with the Dolphins or in your work with youth and with the Hawks?
Yeah, I definitely can talk about our success, or I should say a story from our Dolphins program. So under our Football Unites umbrella, we do a number of programs, as I was speaking about before. And one of them is actually a program we call the Captains. And so we bring kids together from all different entities. So not 2020, I was going to say last year, but I have to remember that 2020 didn't happen. So 2019, we would bring these group of kids together once a month for 4 months, and they would be vastly different in their backgrounds. So this year, we actually had a group of kids from the Greater Islamic Center of Miami. We actually had the Consulate of Israel invited a group from a temple, so a Jewish group. We had Special Olympics that had kids, and then we had a group from an organization called Latinos in Action. So when you talk about like all ends of the spectrum, we had different faith, different ability, different economic status, right? And so we bring all these kids together and they go through some diversity training, but then they also play football, right? We believe that just like working towards this common goal is super fun. Plus, like in middle school, who doesn't want to be active, right? Like all the education stuff is really fun, but like I want to move. So we were a little nervous because we had never worked with Special Olympics before in this way. And we've always done programming with them with just their group. And so we've heard the old saying, right? Kids are cruel. And we kind of went in, naively thinking, oh, this is what it's going to be, right? Like these kids are going to be so ready and competitive and want to play that the Special Olympics kids may get left behind due to some of their ability. And they start playing, and we started to see these middle school kids just exude this patience that I think even as an adult I lack, right? And they were just patient with the kids from Special Olympics. It was just like they had this understanding of including them without being told, right? It wasn't like keep away from this kid or that kid. It was like, let me slow down and have them be part of the fun, even though I know that like I might have to go a little slower, I might be a little ahead. There's no need for me to leave this person in the process. And just seeing middle school kids react without being told that was just super powerful. So I think that was just one example of seeing the things that we teach and say and believe in matter, and that like really love does prevail. I know that is super cliche, but kids aren't just innately cruel, they were just accepting and understanding and inclusive naturally.
Yes, that's a great story. I often find myself having two young kids saying, why can't we adults just be more like kids in the openness and the kindness and all that you're describing. So I love to hear that. Thank you. So I think it's very clear probably from what's been shared already that all of us feel really passionate about this, and like there's so many positives to it and so many victories that do come. But I do also want to acknowledge that there are barriers to success in sport for development as well. So, and we can now everyone doesn't have to answer every question. So if you feel like you have something different, please share, and then we'll move forward. But I want to talk a little bit about the barriers to the field. And actually, Anthony, one of our participants today, asked a similar question. So I'm just going to cover that as well. Thank you, Anthony, for your question. So can you guys talk about some of the things that keep you up at night or present themselves as challenges to the work you're trying to do? And Anthony specifically asks about like, what are the challenges to overcome in order to ensure equitable access, especially in this ever-changing and digital world? So can you talk a little bit about some of the barriers and maybe some of your strategies for overcoming those?
I think.
Go
ahead,
yeah.
Roxy.
I just, in terms of South Africa, I think our context here is, well, everyone's barrier is probably funding, but our limitation to capacity of what we can deliver is really limited by funding. And we are all volunteer driven, which is a bonus because we have this team of passionate volunteers who give of their time. For us, it's a weighing up program delivery time versus time spent on fundraising. So finding that balance. And in South Africa, I would say that program management is not funded at all. So people are not really supporting kind of that driving it. We are blessed to have a company who does support us in that term, in that side. And there's this balance in terms of not barriers, but like marketing versus donation. So a lot of companies here will want to market a product on the back of supporting others. And then I was just thinking in terms of the digital, what the amazing thing is, and it's not really a barrier, I would say, but we have, for example, someone who she's on here at the moment. She actually moved to Johannesburg, which is landlocked, no ocean. And she's one of our, Fiona, she's one of our volunteers. And being able to be in this new kind of digital world, she can do all our programming planning from Johannesburg. And we're able to deliver surf therapy at the beach, at the ocean. So it has unlocked this ability to work more remotely. So in terms of opportunity, that's been fantastic. In terms of barriers, the other thing we've realized is that we're limited in terms of access to transportation. So with participants with a physical disability, having cars that are accessible to be able to put wheelchairs and family members in, and then accessing areas like townships to be able to go in to fetch participants on a regular basis is a big limitation for us. And it probably wasn't something we had expected to be so big. And that just holds, it limits our capacity to be able to deliver our programs to the full effect that we could.
Roshana, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was going to say for us, it's really the expectation, right? So I think with being, again, a national kind of sport that is huge, right? I think there's this assumption that we have these unlimited resources that can go out in the community. And so everybody expects us to be everywhere all the time. And so I think that's tough, because you do, and right, we're like any other organization, we do have a focus. And so when we're focused on things like diversity and inclusion, that means there's other great initiatives that are happening, but they just may not align with where the core of our work is. So we've done programs with human trafficking or homelessness or feeding. And while those are great, they're not our core focus. So we don't spend a ton of resources in that area, right? But how do you tell somebody like, your challenge or your issue that you are trying to move forward to save the world is just not the one that we can be focused on right now, right? That's the hard part, because they all are important. So I think that's huge for us. But then also kind of where we focus in 3 kind of counties, but we're unique because our state, we actually don't service the whole state. There's NFL teams like the Detroit Lions where they can service their entire state, but with us, we actually share our market with 2 other teams. So there's also like these awkward conversations that happen when people will reach out to us from North Florida, and we have to say like, hey, we actually have rules internally where we can't actually go up there because you technically like belong to somebody else's market. But there's kind of these restrictions, which are, I think, definitely unique, right, to the NFL in our markets. But it does make it challenging because you do have to tell people no, and then who wants to be that organization. So I think those are some of our very unique challenges.
I think both of you demonstrated the complexity and uniqueness and diversity of organizations working in this space. I think, it's pretty common to say that funding is an issue. You can have the greatest idea for a program and youth or participants you want to serve, but how do you make that work financially? But I love that you both brought up facets outside of that kind of, again, demonstrate that there are unique challenges culturally, geographically, demographically, and even just based on the expectation of what your organization is and does. So yes, never short on having to find solutions to challenges. So Roshana, you brought up a topic that leads me to another question about focus and like knowing what your focus is and choosing programming more related to that. And so, when you look at the scope of sport for development, some organizations are very focused. Like I think it sounds like you are, and Roxy, your organization is really focused on surf as therapy specifically for people with various forms of disabilities. But then you also have organizations that just say, we are promoting social change through sport, and we are going to work toward, destabilizing all of these different issues. And so they're more broad. And so I'm just curious as to your thoughts on focus. And do you think that it's to your advantage, and this is obviously opinion-based, to be very specific and this is what we do and offer really good programming in that, or to more broadly focus your area of social impact?
So I actually believe that it's important to be more focused. And I see Ryan had to put a question in the question and answer box. So I think this will kind of tie into that. But his question was more specifically about how hard is it to do meaningful work when you're in an organization that like success is on the field, right? Wins and losses. And how do you get people to care about that? And I think it's connected, right? When you have a very specific focus, people then understand your identity. So when they see us out and about in the community, we have put forth this message over and over and over again about being focused on diversity and inclusion and bringing people together. And so that's how we measure our wins in the community world. Is that actually happening? Are we actually bringing people together in spaces that they weren't before we kind of were the catalyst for this? And so I think when people can understand your message and it's very specific and singular, they can get behind that, right? But if you are truly everything to everybody, then you're really nothing, because you're just in too many places and nobody can understand your message and your brand. And so that's what we believe and how we focus. But it also helps us from a fundraising standpoint, from our foundation side, our nonprofit side. It helps because they have one message to go out to and say, this is what we stand for. And if you stand for these things as well, you can support our foundation in that way. And so I think it's helpful in that space as well.
Yeah, I would add to that. I do think focus is necessary. Our organization certainly is focused on one thing. COVID, though, challenged us to it was a weird year. That's why I want to bring focus in my opinion, is the way to go. But then you also need to have the flexibility of, okay, things change. Now what do we do? Do we need to help in other ways? Do we need to expand a little bit? And that's a hard question. I don't think it has a single answer. I think it creates a lot of barriers and issues when you try to expand and defocus. I don't know if you even say that word. Sorry for my not perfect English, but we were forced to kind of bend a little bit and say, okay, we are here for our community. Do we need to change things a little bit? Do we need to provide support in other ways than just, golf and character skills? And so it is important to have the team and the conversation, at least, of when the circumstances make you branch a little bit, but for certain focus, I think it what leads to the success of a program for social development, sports for social development. Yeah,
I think in terms of us, we are very ocean-based, so specific in the terms of like ocean-based therapy programs. But we've got 7 pillars of our programming, which is adaptive surfing, which is adapting your surfing, surf therapy. We specifically focus on training, mentorship, and then grassroots surfing. So it's building surfing from the ground up. And we add in an environmental awareness element. So part of being a surfer, we advocate to be kind of a humanitarian as well, picking up litter and looking after our environment. So adding those little things to the whole program just to create this bigger picture thinking. But one thing that we are, in terms of focus, we underpin all we do kind of by the science. What does the data say? So evidence-based best practice principles is really what we kind of set our foundation on. And I'd say adding a research component to build on that foundation within the South African context is really important to us. So we are really driven by the data in terms of, what is the message? What are we doing? Where are we going? And does the science tell us that this is the right direction?
I just finished teaching our research class this morning. And I did not tell Roxy she had to talk about how important the data is, but we just talked about that. So my students who are here, I'm not the only one who believes in that. So yeah, and I do appreciate what you mentioned, Alejandra. It sounds like that some focus, but also the flexibility to respond as needed. And I actually have spent the past year since COVID interviewing program managers in South Africa with different sport for development organizations to talk about how have they had to shift and what might be some long-term change. And there has certainly been an acknowledgement of increased mental health challenges. And so adding some programming and resources around that. So I think it's an example of you can remain focused, but add within the scope of that. And so I think that's really important. Okay, I want to get to a few of the questions that some of the, we actually have answered a few, but I want to go in a bit more to some of the questions from the audience. So Mosey asked, what are the differences between organizations that use sport for change and organizations that use other methods? So you guys are obviously in the sport space, so I'm not sure how much thought you've given to that, but I think this has to do with with development organizations. Some use sport and some use other methods. Do you have any kind of thoughts on the differences there, or maybe advantages, disadvantages? That's a tricky one.
I will say that I think kind of just thinking internally, probably a major difference is like in my space, I think we are still required to drive revenue. So while we do good, right? We don't just do good for do good's sake. I think we are still a for-profit entity as opposed to like a foundation or a nonprofit where really everything they make can go out into the greater good. Like I still do have to drive some revenue with these feel-good programs. So I think that that's a very unique thing because I do have some stakeholders that I have to keep in mind, right? Like if I have a sponsor that's on a program, I have to make them happy. So if they want to focus on a different audience or a different target than maybe I set out or that I feel really is in need, that kind of holds some weight. So I think that kind of when you're talking about the for-profit world and the nonprofit world, that's a major difference. But I think when you talk about sport versus non-sport and development, I think sport just kind of can like transcend language barriers from a very basic standpoint, right? Like I can be with a group of kids who may not speak English and I put them on the football field to teach them character and how to work together. And we don't even really have to have a conversation. It just kind of comes out as they're starting to understand how to work with their teammates and so on and so forth. So I would venture to say that, but good question, Mosey.
I would just, the one thing I'll add to that is all of us have this sport passion. So really have gone through the path of using sport for that development, system. And there's obviously also like the political diplomatic side of it as well that I know less about, but through the work I've done with State Department, all of our programs that we run through state are through sports diplomacy, which is housed in the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. So under that side of it, you obviously have development through education, but you also have programs like arts and music and dance. And so I think that personally, I believe in those as common languages like sport, where you can really communicate across cultures, across barriers, across backgrounds through this common love or interest that may not require you to have a deep conversation, at least as the opening point. So I would just say that I think there are some very cool organizations doing similar work that are more in the like arts side of things that also I think can be really successful. When sport came into the development world, I think people saw it as like, oh, it's our magic bullet. Here we go. It's going to work. And so I would just caution you to say, the programs still have to be well planned and organized and run and thoughtful. And so it's not just going to be successful because sport is a part of it, but I do think it gives you a leg up. So that would be my personal opinion on it. Okay, so we're getting close to the end of our time. I think there's one more audience question in here, which is probably a great one to end on. Let's see how long this takes us. So Amy asks, for those who perhaps aren't working in this space, but somewhat inspired by this conversation and initiatives, as a volunteer, how would one get connected to an organization in their local community like this? What would finding opportunities like that potentially look like?
I would jump very fast into that one because we wouldn't be who we are thanks to our volunteers. So really, it's just what does a volunteer do? You know, in my case, you don't need to know anything about golf. You just need to be someone who's willing to learn and who wants to, you know, make a difference, whatever that means to you, or make an impact. And so if I was wanting to look for opportunities to volunteer, if sports is what I like, then I would just, you know, try to find a sports organization. If it's music, if it's art. And so I would just say, whatever motivates you, because it is important that you do believe in this case that sports is the way. Maybe for you it's music, art, reading, you know, whatever, dancing. And so I think it starts with that. Do I feel motivated to help in that regard? And then in my case, volunteering it can come from a more coaching standpoint, or from a more administrative, or those maybe not so focused areas that we're trying to tag, you know, maybe like a food drive, or like I doesn't come to my mind right now, or like a gift drive. Like we also need help in those parts. So it really like there's a lot of opportunity. So it can be very broad. I think it comes more to where do I see myself helping, so that you do like a good job, right? It's not only helping because of helping and just because I want to feel good, right? I think it also has to come from what motivates you, really.
I think I can add to that as well in terms of the volunteering. So we are, like I mentioned, 100% volunteer driven. The first thing we kind of say is like, if you're moved by the journey that you see kind of ahead of you, you don't need any skills. So no skills required. People go, oh, but I don't know how to surf. I don't know how to push people into waves. What must I do? We say, well, there's very many levels. And the beauty of what COVID has actually done is that so much can be done remotely. So 90% of our program planning can be done from anywhere in the world. And we really ask the volunteers what they're passionate about and what their skills are. So for us, for example, like graphic design or writing or photography, or you know, any of those skills that they might already have in their toolkit are of such value to us. So it's not, if everybody was just a surf coach, nothing would actually move forward. So really we value the skills that each volunteer has. And some people are just happy with the mundane job of, you know, handing out the wetsuits, and that's their thing as well. So not everybody wants to be kind of in the front and center, and one's skills are really valued. The ones that you have, or just showing up, is also fantastic.
I would say, I mean, obviously, I think the volunteering is amazing. And I would suggest it as well. We're in a little different scenario because we can't just take volunteers, obviously. But what I always tell people that come to me and ask that question is I say, be the change you want to see in the world, literally. You know, if you are passionate about programs that we run and you don't have the opportunity to volunteer, do them on your own, start them on your own. I think if COVID has taught us nothing else, I feel like everybody I know is an entrepreneur now. And, you know, being entrepreneurial doesn't mean that you would just always have a consumer good that you're selling, right? Like you can be an entrepreneur in the sense of, if you are passionate about homeless and feeding people, go feed the homeless. Like you don't need an organization to do that. You can do that on your own. You can start your own, and that will help you kind of transition to turning that into a passion or a career, right? Because when I'm looking for people to join my team on the community relations side, I will take somebody that's never formally worked in it, you know, but they have started, even if it's, I've helped 10 people because I started this feeding program in my neighborhood where I just make sandwiches and drop them off. Like, to me, that means that you take initiative. That means that you're passionate about it. That means that you understand how to start something and then follow through and finish it. So I think just be that change. If you cannot find the formal opportunity, just do it, you know?
That's great advice. Yes. And anyone who's local in Richmond, we will be glad to connect you with some awesome organizations doing work locally. So yes, thank you to all of you. So I think we do have time for one final question, and it's such a great ending question. It's how I actually always try to end either sessions or classes, like, let's look to the future. So Jade, thank you for setting us up for a great final question. What do you all see as the future of sport for development? What do you see as the next step? So just maybe some closing thoughts on like your views about what this might look like going forward.
Well, not in every country, sports for social development is as developed as in the US. And so for me, what it looks like is hopefully back home, either Panama, Argentina, whatever that means. I'm from all over the place. We do need the better infrastructure. So for me, I would love to see it become more like a public, how do you call it? Like accessible to everyone, but in the same way with all the good infrastructure, with good programming, with resources. And I mean, I know that takes a lot, but for me, it will look something like back home, you have access to, the Roxy Foundation, the First Sea Triangle. But I think it should be more accessible or there should be more organizations in the rest of the world. And I think it's going forward for sure.
I think here in the States, I think it very much is becoming a focus. So what I will say is I think that more organizations have realized that there are places to help, and that when they do that, it does a lot of good for not just the community that it serves, but also their brand as well. And so I think the future of it is you will see more organizations taking stands. You'll see more organizations standing on the right side of history, if you will. And I think gone are the days where people are conservatively sitting back and saying, that's not my problem to be involved in. So from a sports side, I think you're going to start to see a lot more sports and players and entities kind of standing up for kind of this world that we all want to move towards, where things are equitable. And, your experience as a woman can be the same experience as a man moving through our society, and choose any marginalized group, right? And throw them into that analogy. And I think it holds true. So I really do honestly believe that it will help us move our world and our society forward.
I think for us, the future of sport for development, what I'd like to see is a lot of organizations within South Africa working collectively together. We lean on a lot of work from other types of sports, and it would be really fantastic, and I think the right direction to pull together and lean in on one another's skill sets and things that people have done before us. So not to have to relearn, on our own, but collectively work together to be stronger together for the greater good of our participants that we serve through sport.
Yes, I love the idea of the collective, the teamwork. So I do hope that becomes more of a norm. And Roxy, we have seen the sunset behind you from the start to finish here. So I feel like it's a poetic ending, and you've made us all jealous of your home. So I'm going to turn it back over to Amy now to close us out.
Wow, I'm in awe after learning the stories you've shared and the impact you're continuing to make. Attendees, thank you for coming to this webinar today and to celebrate International Day of Sport for Development and Peace with us. I hope to celebrate you're inspired to find an opportunity to volunteer in an organization locally, or as Roxy said, internationally, as there's many opportunities virtually. As Roshana quoted, be that change you want to see in the world. Thank you to our moderator, Dr. Carrie LeCrom, and expert panelists, Roshana, Alejandra, and Roxy. VCU alumni, faculty, staff, and family members of current students appreciate your expertise and experience that you bring to this topic. We are so grateful for the work that you do to better your communities and the world, and the awareness we can build, and we want to thank you for answering our questions live today. We will be reposting this webinar, to Facebook and YouTube with closed captioning for later viewing. We have linked to a survey in the chat box that we would appreciate if you can complete. We truly value your input and want to know what we should keep doing more of and how we can improve. So if you could take the time to do that, it would be really helpful. If you've enjoyed listening and learning from the Center for Sport Leadership at VCU, please consider supporting the school with a gift. CSL is an internationally ranked program, and we rely on the generosity of its alumni and friends to support student scholarships, which allows us to compete for the best students in the world. I've linked where you can give in the chat box. Thank you again for joining us today. Go Rams, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.